let's proceed with hows, or the how, the HOWs of the psychoanalytic criticism. This is how the literary criticism works. It has 4 parts. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Let's proceed first with the Part 1. Part 1 is what your dreams tell you. This theory suggests that the dreams are forms of the unconscious desires being repressed. Hindi depressed, but repressed. For example, you dream about something worth being written and then you write it on your story, but you are not aware that these are things you want or like. Unconsciously, it's what you want, but then again, it's being repressed kasi if this your logical thinking of the conscious or the ego, it's not quite acceptable. But then you still do it. You write it. Diba? An example of this one is Frederick August Kokule's discovery of the molecular structure of benzene. If you're familiar with this, you can also search for deeper or more information online. No, it's Frederick August Kokule's discovery of the molecular structure of benzene. The reason behind this, it being part 1 or ano bang sinasabi ng dream mo, the reason behind this is his one-night dream. Frederick August Kokule dreamt one night where this chemist dreamt of a string of atoms in the shape of a snake swallowing its tails. Next morning when he woke up, he drew his figure on his notebook and soon realized that it was the graphic structure of the benzene ring he had been struggling to decipher. When he reported his findings, he stated that, let us learn to dream, gentlemen, and then we may perhaps find the truth. Therefore, Frederick August Kokule had discovered the molecular structure of a benzene based on his dream. The dreams and the literature are associated based on the unconscious or the repressed desires of the author. Can you believe it? Then again, we have the next part, which is talking about Sigmund Freud's interpretation of the dreams. Sometimes you interpret it in many ways, but then this is Sigmund Freud's interpretation of the dreams. He said, or he believed, that the best avenue for discovering some of the content and activity of the unconscious is through dreams. It is the interaction of the conscious and the unconscious, and not either one is working in isolation, by which we shape ourselves and our world. That is Sigmund Freud's interpretation of dreams. Do you understand it? Then, if you understand it, let's proceed with the part 2. Part 2 talks about the unconscious. The unconscious. While working with his patients, or with Sigmund Freud's patients, that were diagnosed as hysterics, which is a inadequacy, or like it's a physical, it's a mind disability, hysterics. Sigmund Freud theorized that the roots of their problems was psychological and not physical. Although it may sound odd to us, but he believed that these patients had suppressed and sensuous desires that they unconsciously refused to deal. To have a better working knowledge on how psychoanalysis works in literature, a literary critic should recognize how the elements of the unconscious function. Do you also agree on that? The name for the part of the psyche, or the mind, the psyche or mind, that receives and stores our hidden desires. We have the ambitions, fears, passions, and the irrational thoughts. More often than not, we are unaware of the presence of the unconscious. It's called unconscious for a reason, right? We are unaware of it. We don't know if it's there or not. It's unconsciously done. Okay. So we operate consciously, believing that our reasoning and analytical skills are solely responsible for our behavior. However, our slips of the tongue, our dreams, our art, even irrational behavior that motivate our actions, like whenever we do something unintentionally, others would say, "Oh, I admit it. It appeared unintentionally, but that's how you truly thought and felt deep inside. So you still did it." Parang yung thought na when you tell a joke on someone, but it's kind of offending. You say, it's just a joke, but then again, it's a slip of the tongue, and you then realize that it's half meant. For sure, you would suffer the consequences of, example, cutting classes, but then deep inside you feel thrill of doing that. So it motivates you to still do it. This is a classic example of the unconsciously dealing with repressed emotions. The thought is irrational, but then it manifests consciously through the behavior. According to Freud, again, it is the job of the psychoanalyst to identify those unresolved conflicts that give rise to a patient's neurosis. And through psychoanalytic therapy, which includes dream analysis, return the patient to a state of well-being. For Freud, the unresolved conflicts that give rise to any neurosis constitutes the strong stuff of literature. A work of literature, for he believed, was the external expression of the author's unconscious mind. So, more often, the things that are written are also the expression of what the author doesn't know, which is his unconscious mind. Do you understand it? I hope you do. Accordingly, the literary work must then be treated like a dream, applying psychoanalytic techniques to the text to uncover the author's hidden motivations, repressed desires, and wishes. Another idea that we have, one of the students or the student of Simon Freud, is Carl Gustav Jung's archetypal criticism. Si Carl Jung. No. According to Carl Jung, he identified three similar kay Freud the parts of like what is the archetypal criticism. It constitutes the first one, the conscious. The conscious, according to him, or according to Carl Jung, is the waking state directly affected by the unconscious. The second one is the personal unconscious. According to him, the personal unconscious is the first part of the unconscious. It exists directly below the surface of the conscious and contains elements of all those private affairs that occur in each of our lives. Next one is the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious it houses the cumulative knowledge, the experiences, and the images of the entire human race. The collective unconscious plays an essential role as to how we perceive things around us. Kumbaga, it's trying to collect now. And it also talks about how we behave. According to Jung, we respond to certain myths, stories, or in our context literature in general in the same way, not because all of us know and appreciate immediately the story, but because lying deep in our collective unconscious minds are the memories of the humanity's past. These memories are now embodied by what we call archetypes. Ito mga archetypes na to. Archetypes are the patterns or the images of repeated human experience, such as yung birth, pagkamatay, rebirth, and the four seasons, motherhood, and to name a few, that expresses themselves in our stories, our dreams, our religions, and our fantasies. This archetypal criticism is not entirely a new branch of psychoanalytical criticism, since, as we just discovered, it is more of a development of our understanding of the role of the unconscious in approaching the texts. That is quite long for you to understand because that's also part of the summary of it. And then again, we understood it, hopefully. Then moving forward, the part 3. Part 3 is the author's dream and literature. Part 3, do you have any idea about this one? The author's dream in literature. Similar to the other ones, but then again, let's have a deeper understanding about this. According to Freud, the longingness to gratify desires inspires authors to produce literature. Your longingness, now your desires natin. The outward manifestation of these suppressed feelings, wishes, or desires in the literary work itself. Freud declares that a literary work is therefore the author's dream or fantasy. Psychobiography kind of thing, diba? But in actuality or real life actuality, Freud believes that the literary work is the author's dream or fantasy again. But in this case, the text should be analyzed like a dream. Therefore, when you're trying to have a literary criticism, you should analyze it like it's a dream. Whereas the psychoanalytic critic employs the techniques used in dreams therapy to unlock the hidden meanings, housed in the symbols throughout the story, and arrive at an accurate interpretation of the text. This also means that we have to assume that the dream is a distinguished wish. It's a wish, unconscious wish, no? This can be traced back when we were kids, when we longed to be sensually and emotionally satisfied. And one way or another, these are not fully gratified. But the actual wish is often too strong and too forbidden to be acknowledged by the mind's censor. Kumbaga, the ego. These are unconscious things that we cannot let out because it's being repressed. It's not that acknowledged by our censoring utak natin, which is the ego. And we have the two kinds of dreams that talks about content now. We have the first one, the latent content. The latent content pertains to the wish of the dream. Next one is the manifest content. Manifest content is the change or the radically different dream. By directly applying the techniques employed in food and dream analysis, the psychoanalytic critic believes the actual, uncensored wish can be brought to the surface, thereby revealing the story's true meaning. Therefore, our goal is to analyze by uncovering the various layers of the dream. Remember that only the manifest content lies on the surface. The hidden throughout the story or various level lies the latent content of the story, which is the real meaning or the interpretation of it. Do you understand it? Good. Then let's proceed with the part 4. Oh, we're almost at the conclusion, almost the end now. Just be with me. For the part 4, it is the psychoanalyzing the text. What does it mean when you say psychoanalyzing the text? Meaning, you are trying to understand the idea behind or the mind of the text. Since we're talking about psychoanalysis, such as the fruited mind, you analyze it using the fruited mind of the text, no? Of the story of what you're reading or the literary work. No? By gaining an in-depth understanding of the author, these critics assumed they could better interpret the author's canon. Canon means a long list of works taken as authentic. So, author's authentic work, canon. At this point, we want to know how to reveal the tenets of the psychoanalytic criticism in a text. From what we have recalled and unlocked earlier, we can then deduce that this approach focuses mainly on the author. Part of our task as a literary critic deals mainly on gathering data about the author through biographies, personal letters, lectures, and any other written documents that will help us construct the author's personality with all its idiosyncrasies, internal and external conflicts, and most importantly, the author's neurosis. Certain questions focus on the psychoanalysis or mind of the author based on the food in mind. We have the conscious, the unconscious should also be considered. If we consider the literary work as a manifestation of the author's dream, then it requires us to apply Freud's psychoanalytic techniques, the use of dream analysis also, the personality development, and the psychological theories that helps us to dive beneath the surface level of a text and ascertain its true meaning. However, there is really no concrete system that includes overly specific questions that guides the interpretation. But our working knowledge or mastery of Freudian theory or Jungian principles will help us discover the truth that lies within each of us, reflected or manifested in the literature. That is the end of my report or discussion. Do you have any questions? Anyone? Okay, if you don't have any questions, that is the end of my report for lesson 6, the psychoanalytic theory or the psychoanalytic literary criticism. But then reminding everyone, as associated with my report, the next time you dream, try to write about it. You may become the next award-winning writer. That's all. This is Jahiria Abbas, your reporter for today. Thank you.